Hello and welcome to the Truth, Health, Freedom podcast. My guest today is Charmain Berry. Charmain is an accredited psychotherapist working in private practice in Manchester, specialising in the treatment of psychological trauma. She holds a degree in psychology and diploma in CBT model counselling. She is an EMDR Europe Association approved EMDR practitioner and is a qualified internal family systems practitioner, also known as AFS. She's also recently trained in the comprehensive resource model, a novel therapeutic model which uniquely bridges neuroscience and spirituality. For over 16 years, Charmain has been dedicated to expanding her awareness of the human psyche, with this leading to the field of trauma and the discovery that mental health difficulties directly correlate with earlier life adversity, neglect, and inadequate attachment during childhood. This includes the gestational period of life. She also holds a space for people who believe that wider experiences such as past life and ancestral trauma also impact upon the present. She considers herself a trauma-informed therapist and is in full support of the emerging paradigm shift, which is now challenging the mainstream's assumptions on emotional and physical healing. Charmain has a specialist interest in the newer psychotherapies and has recently completed training in an approach called internal family systems, which is something we're really going to dig into today. This is a psycho-spiritual therapy which provides a safe and understandable way to navigate and heal the complex arrangements within the psyche. The two basic principles of IFS assume that 1, we each have an undamageable core self, and 2, the psyche is multiple in structure. The founder of this approach, Dick Schwartz, learned that if we align with self-energy, with our wounded and dissociated psyche parts, we can affect healing. From this premise, he was able to map out the systemic arrangement patterns within the psyche and develop the techniques required to enter into this murky world in a safe and respectable way. IFS not only brings to life the ancient teachings of our ancestors, but it also enables us to contextualize these into the modern world and the contemporary psychological problems we face. Charmain Berry, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm really well, Alan. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Okay, so I just read your introduction off a piece of paper on my wall. But you're here to actually flesh it out and explain things to our audience. So just like to begin with this IFS. How did you come across IFS, Internal Family Systems, and the work of Dick Schwartz?
Okay, yeah, well, this is a bit of a story actually, and I'll keep it brief. But my training originally was in CBT and then later in EMDR. And with EMDR, it's very important for the practitioner to know about ego states. And this was a relatively new thing to me, but I had a wonderful trainer at the time, Dr. Liz Royal, and she opened this world up to me, this inner world, this inner landscape of ego states. And it was absolutely fascinating. And she taught me everything that she could about working in this realm. And through that process, I learned that these little, what turned out to be autonomous little beings that are up in our psyches, or what we refer to as the ego, are actually what holds our trauma. And our behaviors and the way that we respond to things is also governed and influenced by these sort of beings, these states within our psyche. And I just absolutely loved it. I was fascinated by it and found that I was actually helping clients on a much deeper level using this rather than using other things. So although it was absolutely wonderful, I had this sense that we weren't really reaching a deep level of healing working with the ego states. We were tending to their needs, we were getting to know who they were, and there was a lot of maintenance care happening with them, but I wanted them to heal deeply. And I also wasn't sure where the client's self was in that internal world. I wasn't very clear in that particular model. So I just began Googling these words to see what could be out there. And internal family systems came up on the Google search, and I clicked in, and it was just music to my ears it talked about healing the parts, what the IFS model refers to as parts, and I was referring to as ego states. And that there was also this concept, this understanding about self energy in there. This was the self. So I love accidents and serendipity and synchronicity, and there just happened to be a training coming up like really shortly after that, and jumped on training. And yeah, it just ticked all the boxes. I was very lucky that Dick Schwartz actually trained with my group, even on the level 1, which is very, very rare, and again on the level 2. And it was just a really, really wonderful experience, and I just knew this is what I was going to be really working with. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned parts and ego. So you're saying they're very similar or the same? Because I've only heard of people have an ego, but you're talking about more than one. You're talking about multiple. So what's going on there?
Yeah, it's multiple in there, man. It really is. It's the basic understanding, and this is not just in IFS. This is also in other schools of thought as well, particularly sort of Jungian schools of thought, ancient schools of thought, shamanic ways of looking at things. That the psyche, or the mind, or the ego, we've got this languaging thing going on. There's these different terms that we use for this. Is actually multiple in nature. There isn't just one ego. It's not an ego, as we refer to it. It's made up of many, many, many different, and just this simplistic way of looking at it, we call it these parts. And many people are not aware of that, and the ego sort of seems to get clumped together as one thing, and it gets a bit of a bad press. But when we really look into it and understand it for what it truly is, and I feel like this is what this model really helps us to do, is see it for what it actually is, then it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And we learn that it's actually there as a very, very important part, a very useful part of the human experience that we need to learn to get to know better and understand better, because ego seems to get a bit of a bad press, and we are, kind of encouraged to get rid of it, perhaps, or, it's something that we need to dissolve. And these different kinds of concepts and ideas about what we can do to feel better is missing the point. It really is missing the point with what's actually happening.
Okay, so these parts that constitute what we might have known previously as the ego.
Yeah.
So you're saying these parts have a role. Is that right? They have a role. The ego has a role. The parts have a role. So how do they benefit us? How does an ego benefit us? How do these parts benefit us? Okay. And then what can go wrong?
They have a role. I think, again, there's nobody knows for absolutely sure what this is. My concept of this, my understanding of it, is this energy is a very powerful, helpful energy. And I see it as the kind of the buffer between us, who we really, really are, these bright, divine lights, or whichever way you want to look at that, and this 3D realm, this outer realm. And the ego energy, if you like, the part energy, is here to help us to express that and express who we are through our actions and our behaviors and our deeds. And it's principally a creative energy to help us to sort of create and express who we are. It's very sort of childlike. We could look at innocent children in that way. And what happens, though, is through the process of living, even going back into the womb, through the birth process, and then our lives that we live, we are all, to some extent, lesser or greater degree, subjected to trauma. And this is a very sort of powerful word, and conjures up all kinds of things for people. But trauma is anything that happens to us that makes us doubt ourselves or makes us frightened in some sort of way. And this helper energy becomes re-rolled through that process to, from that point on, protect us from this, whatever it was, traumatic experience happening again. And to also protect the vulnerability, the sense of vulnerability that was created in that moment. So it creates this very complex, fascinating, clever, it's young, but it's clever way of organizing itself so that we can remain safe. That becomes the sort of the focus and the principal concern for the ego. It becomes about remaining safe and survival rather than being about creative expression. Okay. So it operates very, very differently through this process for all of us. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who's really gone through life without some sort of adversity or difficulty. It's the human experience, you know, and I really feel that this system, this internal family system, is part of that, and it's communicating with us all of the time. We're feeling it all of the time, even if we might not be directly connected with it or consciously connected to it. We are feeling it. It is warning us. It is communicating with us. We are all aware that we have little voices in our heads, or we're talking to ourselves, or we're feeling anxious, or we're feeling really down, or we're just getting a bad vibe about something. And, you know, this is the system communicating with us. And we haven't been very conscious of that. And I just really love this term. It's, you know, about being co-conscious, becoming co-conscious with this system and getting into right relationship with it so that we can retrieve and release the energy that's held within it, so that we can become more creative, become more self-expressive, become more of who we really, really, really are. And I feel that's where we're heading. That's where we're going.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you say to get into right relationship with it, so is that ourself getting in right relationship with this system? Is that what's happening there?
The system actually getting into right relationship with self, because
other way around.
Yeah, it's both. It's a dynamic, you know, and quite often there's the internal family system or parts within that are either not aware of self energy. They've disconnected from that, you know. How many of us have a sense of being disconnected or separate? Yeah. And so they're either not aware that it's there, or for some parts within our system, depending on what happened to us in early attachment experiences, some of these parts might actually be quite fearful of self-energy and be concerned about the potential to become overwhelmed in the face of our true selves, which is the energy of love, which is extremely powerful. And so it's definitely a two-way thing. But reuniting this dynamic in right relationship is incredibly important for humanity, you know, and for individuals. Yeah. Less conflict within us.
Yeah. A lot of what you were saying just then, as you described things before, it made me think of, obviously this is a brand new podcast. You're one of the first guests. Yes. And in the process of making this podcast, I was having sleepless nights. I'm doing a course to help me with this podcast. And one of the instructors on the course said, you're going to feel like you're being hunted. Basically, that's your anxiety state the whole time. And so is that this system coming into play to try and protect me in some way? Is that what's going on there?
That's what's going on. That's what you're feeling there, is one of your protective parts. So we have different categories, if you like, of parts that have different kinds of roles within the system. And we have a management system in there. So I'll just talk about that for a little bit, because
please do.
You're really feeling one of your managers right now, which is so this manager is on Reddit, and it might be concerned that Alan is, I don't know, putting himself out there or being recorded. I think a lot of us get this when we're being recorded or filmed or whatever. And there could be that there is a fragility behind that. There's a wounded part behind that that may have on occasion or on occasions when out there being ridiculed in some sort of way or humiliated or embarrassed, those sorts of things. And the protector system then is hyper vigilant to the possibility of that happening again. So one of its management strategies might be to keep you small, to keep you quiet, to ensure that people don't see, so that doesn't happen again. So that would be one way of doing it, yeah. And that could be really influential in a lot of people's lives, just to stay in the background, so that doesn't, we don't have to face any embarrassment or whatever. And then, but you're not doing that. You're like, no, I'm going to do this podcast. And you're stepping through that. So, there could well be another manager here that's going, oh my God, he's doing it, or he's going to do it. What if this happens? And when we talk about we're worrying, it's this sort of what if kind of thinking. And it's the part throwing at you potentially, I don't know, tell me if this is right, like all the things that could go wrong, or I'm asking why you do it. I don't know. It could be linked to certain thoughts as well as this feeling, sleepless nights and things. It be churning thoughts through. But it's all just doing that, Alan, to protect you. There's no other agenda. All these parts have a positive and good intention towards us. And that's difficult to see when we're feeling like utter rubbish and we're feeling very shaky and nervous, that this is actually for our own good. It doesn't make sense to us, yeah? But when we meet these parts and we ask them, and this is what we do as part of the process in internal family systems, we ask the parts what their positive intention is. And it's always good. It's always good. It's always there to protect in some sort of way. And there's a fear that if they don't do this, something really bad's going to happen to you.
Yeah, and then I think you've described that really, really well, actually. You've described this whole process just right. I could relate to pretty much everything you were saying there. So, these parts, you're saying that they're there for our good. They are there with positive intent, but
Yes.
the relationship isn't quite right. So how then do you create that right relationship? What's the process here?
Well, first of all, it's important to have an awareness of this, yeah? And I think every single person that I shared or witnessed, getting to find out about IFS, find that it absolutely resonates with them. It absolutely resonates with their experience as a human being. And there's this sort of sense of like, oh my word, no, this really, really makes sense. And quite often a sense of relief. That there is a way of understanding our anxieties, our addictions, our crazy stuff that we do that we wish we just stopped doing, but we just can't. and a sense of, wow, hope and relief that we can actually do. So that's the first step, yeah. And then the next step, I suppose, is like really learning about the model and what the fundamentals of it are and how this kind of works, how the construct is, yeah. And then it's about knowing how to access these parts and starting to build a relationship with them, which is relatively straightforward. It's quite easy. We close our eyes and go inside and go and meet with them. And we can access them in lots of different ways. Anything that we are experiencing, I don't know whether I'm exaggerating, I don't know, but I think this is so. Like anything that we're exaggerating that isn't love, light, and zenness is a part. So when that sort of knots that we've got in our chest because we've got whatever going on, we can really feel it. We can actually put your hand on it and close your eyes, go inside and go to it. And this is where the journey begins. And there are details within the model that helps us to really do this in a safe way, and that we're taking care of all the patterns and the parts that are in there in a really, really safe way. And it's about really then getting into our own self-energy and being in a dynamic with these parts, but coming from this sort of self-energy place, this divine place, this place of love. And we are turning into our ego system, our internal family system, from a place of love to reconnect with it. And we can then take the parts through various stages, which allows them to ultimately let go of the burdens that they are holding. It's a very, very beautiful process and very powerful. And then what happens is the part is kind of released and reverted back to its original role, back to its and creativity and freedom. And I've really, really simplified this process there, by the way. But it kind of is simple as well, you know, and it kind of makes common sense. And anybody who tries this, who goes in, will find that this is what happens. This actually happens. And it's just behind our eyelids. We can just access it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful description, and you've brought up so many questions. I'm kind of here with I think, oh, I'll ask her this next, and then you just come up with more and more and more. What I wanted to ask you,
on a sort of, just on a practical level, though, when you're asking like, how do we do this? Yeah. You can do this with a therapist on a practical level, who holds space for you and guides you through that process. There is also a lot of self-help material and support online. And, I hold a group in Manchester, for example. And there's other ways of, learning the model so that you can work with your own system, get to know your own system, get your confidence with your system through this process of self-healing.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to ask you about the group and the self-help resources at the end. I'm going to save that till the end for all your contact details and where people can learn more, all that kind of thing. For now, I wanted to come back to what you were saying about love and light and Zen and that side of things, because I've never studied psychology to any great level, but when I did look into it a little bit many years ago, probably the early 90s, I don't remember anything about love and light and Zen at all. So this is obviously a very different approach that's bringing in a very different worldview. So I wanted to ask you, how does this differ to what you learned, say, when you were getting your degree in psychology? How does this worldview differ? Because to me, it seems quite different to what I encountered years ago.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think there was any mention of it when I was studying, or certainly even training as a counsellor and then as a psychotherapist. It hasn't been mentioned a great deal, really. So I think this is where Bess is really trailblazing here and making the whole psychotherapy experience a lot more holistic, and is embracing and recognizing what we are, who we are as human beings. And now I feel it's impossible for us not to recognize this as a very, very important, not just resource, it's kind of like central to who we are. We are slowly switching on and remembering and recognizing who we are as these beings of love, and also realizing that we have everything within us to heal ourselves. Even shamanic practices, which are, astounding and fascinating, sort of rely on this idea that we need the shaman to help us. In psychotherapy, we've needed a therapist to help us. And we're moving away from that. We're moving into this new paradigm now where we're switching back onto who we are, that we have this very powerful energy within us. It's called love. And we can use this, we can direct this, we can manage this in a way where we can heal, not just ourselves, we can heal. And that's really, really, really exciting, and is being talked about more and more as a more acceptable thing. We don't have to sort of like hush, or that's just for like these kinds of practices or whatever. we can't hold it back. We just can't hold it back any longer. It's really, really pushing through, and it is having to be accepted. So, and that's because it works. It absolutely works in a very, very powerful way.
Yeah, definitely. You've brought up some points there about how it can't be held back. That, you know, the quantum revolution is revealing in science is confirming the ancient. So it's kind of like, it's a breakthrough on the one hand, but actually, and it's like discovery, but it's not. It's rediscovery. It's remembering rather than breakthrough.
Yeah, we are remembering, and I really feel like we're going into that time of remembrance and getting into this right relationship with ego. Is part of that. It's allowing us to do that, becoming whole. You know, integrating who we are as in our wholeness as human beings, which is very exciting.
Has your worldview changed? So when you were training in psychology, or let's go back 20 years ago, has your worldview changed through this entire awakening process? Or is it simply that you've learned different methodologies that have confirmed your worldview, or has your entire perspective been evolving in that time?
Yeah, I think it's been evolving. I mean, back then I was going to spiritualist churches and going, wow, what is this? You know, talking to spirit and these sorts of things. You know, just always having an interest in it in the background, but also having an interest in the science and wanting to learn what's out there for people. And so, yeah, just always kept that interest there. And then I think actually it was when I trained in EMDR, that was when it began to kind of merge the spiritual and the psychological. The EMDR is a therapy that also takes us into this space, and I witnessed some really fascinating and interesting things happening there, and beginning to get into this internal landscape and our own psyche. So, and then I became involved and interested in more shamanic type practices, and again opening that world up and those realms of possibility around that. And it's just, you know, it's just become more and more rich, and in understanding. And you know, my view has changed again quite a lot, just even in the last 3 months, about who we are and this realm that we are in. You know, there's all these amazing things like you just mentioned, like the quantum understanding that we're gaining now, and the therapies that are emerging even through that, you know, level of understanding is very interesting. But yeah, it's changed. Yeah, it's changed a lot. And what's really exciting for me is seeing that spiritual actually merging now and becoming, you know, at one with you could call it more mainstream, or I mean, IFS is an evidence-based practice over in the USA, which, you know, puts it on the same level as CBT in the UK, which is the treatment of choice in the NHS, you know, in our NICE guidelines. So it's big. It's big news.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a rich tapestry of methodologies and perspectives all coming together to give you a big toolbox. Would that be right? You've got a big toolbox that you can dip into with lots of different methods, such as EMDR. That's the eye movement something. I don't know what the DR is. What's the DR?
And reprocessing. Yeah.
And how does that work?
Well, it works on a different kind of mechanism within the brain. And it's a very interesting question, like how does that work? Because I don't think they know. They just know that it works. So it's a process of bilateral stimulation, which actually creates trauma, allows trauma to be processed. And we do that by eye movements, right, left, right, left, right, left, or by tapping right, left, right, left. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's so many tapping therapies out there as well. EMDR is one of them. But we also use eye movements, and you know, it's incredible. It's kind of, just to put it really simply, trauma material isn't stored in the brain in the same way as other material, and it kind of gets lodged in short-term memory. And with EMDR, it frees it up somehow, and allows it to go over into long-term memory and become a processed material rather than unprocessed. Trauma remains unprocessed just because of the nature of it and the way the brain organizes it. So EMDR changes that, and we can process it. But lots of things happen in that inner realm when we start to do EMDR. We start to open the psyche, open the mind up, and all sorts of things happen. It's very interesting, you know. But it's different. It is different to IFS. It can be a little bit difficult to keep it on target, because once we start doing this eye movement, we're just opening doors for whatever to happen. And in EMDR, there needs to be careful planning and resourcing around that, because sometimes, you know, people don't know what's going to come through. But it's really interesting that, you know, that's also in the NHS NICE guidelines. It's a treatment. It's an evidence-based treatment. Not many people know that.
So it's proven that it works. They can't show how it works. They can't demonstrate what's going on exactly inside the brain. All they know is if we do this, we get more often than not these results.
We get these results, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, I interrupted you then. Okay. So you've explained how these things work. They are evidence-based. So in America, IFS has got that status EMDR has over here. And you in your own practice have found that they work. Have you, as your practice has developed, as your skills have increased, have you seen that you get better results with your clients these days than you would have done in the past because you're now using these methodologies? Are you able to really witness that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely, if I compare my practice and outcome from when I used to be a CBT therapist, cognitive behavioural therapist, which is working on a very, very cognitive level, so challenging and rationalising and changing the beliefs that we have connected to our experiences. And I quite often, to be honest, used to find myself stuck. I used to feel quite de-skilled sometimes because we wouldn't be paying any attention to the emotion. There are some parts of CBT which are great, really, really, really good. But I would often find, like, where are we going with this? Like, what's deeper? We were actually told not to go into past experiences as CBT therapists, which is all about the present and just dealing with the symptoms as people experience them in the present and here and now, which can be very useful for some people. But I think, you know, my heart's just always been in working at deeper levels and really getting to the root and getting to the source of our difficulties. And EMDR really allows us to do that. We understand that everything that we're experiencing in the here and now is linked to something from before. And when we find that and we can clear that and we can release that, then we'll get the change in the here and now. It's a very different way of working. But I've certainly seen not just like better outcomes, which are there, definitely, but much richer experiences. I mean, it's really beautiful to witness some of the things that happen, these reconnections with these fragmented or lost parts of ourselves, and realizations and discoveries that can be made, you know, when people are reconnecting with memories that's been very deeply repressed, yeah, which are being accessed and released. And the release comes out of the emotional system, it comes out of the body. Quite often we're experiencing parts through physical feelings of pain or aches or illness. So to realize and begin to make those connections, and I think we're curious as human beings about who we are and have a lot to learn about discovering this inner landscape of ours as we go on this journey to become whole, to come home, or whatever phrase you want to use. So every day is, and I'm not exaggerating here, you know, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful stuff to witness, you know. So yeah, the outcomes are there, even with really difficult stuff, which in CBT land and I don't know, other modalities are quite difficult to treat, like OCD. The IFS model and EMDR, but IFS model really, really helps us to, you know, not just heal that symptom, but also help the person realize who they are. I mean, that to me is a much better outcome.
Yeah.
Really.
That kind of brings me on to another question that I wrote down here earlier, because you described richness of experience. Actually, as you were describing that, I started to get goosebumps in certain areas of my body. And then you mentioned things coming out physically. It was like a nice little synchronicity going on there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, because you described the richness of experience, I wanted to ask, who is this for? Because does someone need to be struggling with mental health issues? Or is it something, a tool that someone who would be considered healthy, who would never think I've got mental health issues, can use to become super healthy, super happy, super effective, or super aligned with who they really are? Is it a tool that anyone can use? You don't have to be depressed or anxious or have OCD or anything else. Would that be right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, we can use this for enhancements and developing more what we call in the model self-energy, being more self-led, yeah? So not being governed by our part system that are operating from a place of fear and protection, and instead coming from this Zen place in before, in our self-energy, and being that and walking that in this world. And when we're in that place, we're much more connected to who we really are. We're going to be more creative. We're going to feel happier. We're going to attract less drama and less stuff in our lives. We're going to feel confident, and the qualities of self-energy, which are around confidence, creativity, and clarity, and feeling calm. These 8 qualities that begin with the letter C, and I can only ever remember about 6 of them, but they're there, you know. And isn't this what we're all striving for? Isn't this what everybody's looking for? This happiness, this way of being. And there's a lot of confusion out there about how to find this, how to do this. I mean, I think we're perhaps done with trying to find it in the material. I don't know. But, you know, we're looking at now for ways of really, really connecting with this. These feelings of happiness and peace are within us. It's in our own self-energy. What we can learn to do is connect more with that through healing the energy of the parts. So this model is for everybody to be living a self-led life, to be understanding that when we get triggered, which is a word we use a lot, when we get triggered, we can use that as an opportunity to access our own system, to go to the part that's been triggered and heal it, yeah? Instead of pointing the finger or blaming whatever it is that's triggered us and getting into this kind of thing that we do as human beings, we can start using every single opportunity, every single experience, especially the stuff that makes us feel awful, as opportunities to go into our own systems and start cleaning things up and start healing ourselves. So it can actually become like a spiritual practice, a very powerful spiritual, a way of. We can also start to recognize parts in other people, so that we can grow in our sense of compassion towards each other's. Again, as we're on this road to coming back to realizing who we really are and that we're all one, how can we practically do that and get along with each other, you know, without triggering each other and falling out and those human things that happen. So it's certainly not just for so-called, I mean, I find it even hard to say the words mental health now that I know that it's a heart system, you know, it just doesn't resonate at all, you know. So certainly we can use it for those other aspects, those more spiritual and life enhancing aspects.
I like the way you described how it can help with your external relationships as well. So it's the internal family systems blending with the external family systems and helping in all areas of life. Yeah. So how has it changed your
This is why it's called internal family system. Yeah, absolutely. So we understand that what's happening here internally in this, and it's called internal family systems because it resembles the arrangements and the dynamics that we find out here in external reality between families. So there are usual, you know, archetypical roles that people fall into, and the martyr and the good one and the hero and these sorts of things is happening in our own system. And Dick Schwartz has got a background in family system therapy. So how has it changed? It's changed everything. It's changed everything. It's certainly given me a lot more patience and compassion, and has improved. I don't know, as that's happened as well, I feel like the quality of the people around me has really improved as well. And yeah, it's sometimes easy to forget, and we still get triggered. You know, I'm not there living this is sort of as fully as I would like to, but it's, you know, I'm a work in progress. But yeah, certainly has, and it helps me to have a lot more understanding about myself. And it's joyful, actually, that even the stuff that's really upsetting. I mean, I don't believe in the term around any terms around depression or anxiety. I'm just like, what part is this? And everything seems a lot calmer and relaxed around. And it gives also a really constructive way for us to help other people, not to get caught up in their stuff so much, well, and give other people tools and a way of reconciling. And yeah, it's
I like that you used the word joyful in there. I'm pretty sure you did, if I remember right. That might be my short-term memory malfunctioning, but I think you did. And it's so obvious that your passion comes through about this. And that's something I wanted to ask you about. Have you always had this passion for this subject area of just improving people's lives? Has that always been there? Has that always been your mission? Because you seem, you know, it's not your job. You mentioned you have this group that meets once a month, and it's not like you're doing that for a job. You make a living by going to work and you see your clients, and that's you making a living, but you're out there trying to educate people about this, as you are now in this interview. You're kind of campaigning for it. You're passionately advocating for it. Have you always felt that this is the kind of role you wanted, that you should be doing?
No. I don't think certainly from leaving school. I mean, I've liked helping, and but I think I'm typical wounded healer. I think, you know, I've been driven along this path to help myself primarily, without really knowing that, and doing it under the guise of helping others, maybe initially, you know, at least for a good while. And but that's been great, actually, because I've really tried things, and, you know, if I found that something's really worked for me, then I've explored it further. So I'm my own guinea pig with that. I don't know what it is. I think that's changed in more recent years as I've become more settled in myself, I think. And now I just can't stop. I don't know what it is. I just find the whole trail, the adventure of it, really, really exciting. You know, it just doesn't stop. There's more exciting things coming out. It just lights my whole body up to talk about it, you know. And even if I wanted to, I don't think I could stop. I'm on this little adventure. We feel compelled to tell people. I don't know, you know, I had difficulties public speaking for a long time, and this has been like, you know, but I just love how everything sort of conspires to help you. Life is, and I'm pinching my friend's term here, Heidine, but life is medicine, all of it, you know, and it's always working with you to give you what you need to heal. And this is my version of that for me. You know, it's pushing me through helping myself, helping others, which is me anyway, because I'm you. You're me. So yeah, it's just what floats my boat.
Yeah. So that life is medicine. That would be the triggers. They are medicine. It's, you know, that's what you need. It's actually what you should be welcoming, because that's where your lessons are. That's where your learning is. That's where your growth is.
Yes. Yeah. It's pointing you to where there is unprocessed trauma and showing you this, because it's, we need to travel light and not be carrying unnecessary imprints that trauma leaves within us. So just even being born is a hugely traumatic experience. We come into this world carrying trauma, and that's before we begin, which is another show about ancestral trauma, past life trauma. We know we've got the field of epigenetics now showing us that we do inherit stuff. So life is about that. It's about recognizing that these feelings are helping us, and this in this training school that we're in, this college, whatever you want to call this realm, through this process. And something really important flashed into my head then about that. Once again, oh yeah, it's I was just going to say something about humanity and how things are changing, and that I think we've been not able to see beyond, up until whenever recent times, beyond this sort of reaction of being victims. Bad thing happens to us, as it will do, but we get caught, and have been getting caught up in the and oh my God, this is not fair, and this is not right, and poor me, and look how bad it's been. And we've been stuck there for however long, and this is what's kind of held us in that, you know. And then sort of martyrdom, like being the martyr over whatever happening and what have you. So these have been incredibly strong archetypes that have been influencing humanity over time, and we're moving out of that as well. We've got to get beyond victimhood, because it just sort of sets up these cycles and keeps us trapped, and we can't grow from that place. We need to look beyond that reaction, and I think we're getting there with that, you know. But we're still heavily into it. But this is part of the shift, or whatever you want to call this. There's definitely things changing. We're feeling that. We're having these conversations. You know, something's happening, and these sort of ways that we're looking at ourselves and the way that we react, and these tools now to be able to actually practically do these things, are part of that.
This is music to my ears. I'm loving what you were saying there. That was actually giving me goosebumps, because it's just so aligned with my mission statement for this podcast. It is,
wow.
You know, about exploring these issues and then trying to empower. So recognizing we've had this victim archetype, but then what can we do about it? And here's a tool, and then you've got a whole toolbox full of tools that we can take that personal responsibility. We can do something about it individually, collectively, the microcosm on the macrocosm. And we can start to make that change and work towards it. We've got that within our own power, and that's such an inspiring and empowering thing to know that we've got that within us, and there are people helping who can help us, and it's great to know.
Yeah, it is really great to know, and I think a relief for a lot of people, and this realize that, you know, we're coming out as well, this idea that we don't have power. We've not been in our sovereignty. We've been disempowered. Well, we've kind of allowed it to happen in a way, but, you know, we go to the doctors when we need something. We rely on the governments to look after us. We've been handed away all of the time. And, you know, this system that's around us, and the governments and what have you, is just a reflection of that. It's a reflection of where we're at in our sense of relationship with ourselves. And that's being reflected back to us in our environment. So as we kind of realize and stop blaming the governments and pointing the finger out there, which can be fun, I suppose, but, you know, we need to look within us. These governments are not going to change until we do. When we're in conflict with ourselves and we're arguing because, you know, we've got stuff, polarized parts and trauma that we've not healed, and we're struggling and we're feeling sorry for ourselves, and, you know, we're arguing with each other, our governments are going to reflect that within us. And as we get better, and as we get healed, and we get healthier, these people will change as well. It's just how it is in this realm. So it's important. It's important that we recognize this. We stop going out there to make the change. It isn't going to work. We've tried that for time. We need to come back inside and rediscover this world that we have within us. This is where all the action is. I mean, it's so exciting, and bring that healing in. So that's the change that we will see in the world. And it sounds cheesy in a way, but, you know, it's not just even about acting well and acting with compassion. It's about really healing the parts of us that stop us from being like that, and clearing that so that we can fully express our self-energy. That to me is the strongest and the most powerful thing that we can do in this time for ourselves and for the earth, because these changes will be reflected in our planet and the quality of our planet, and the way that as we create more self-energy and more self-love, we'll love our planet more.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love what you said there, because again, that ties into my mission statement, and it also ties into something you told me last week when we did a sort of little prep interview. You told me, I can't remember that guy's name, and it was someone whose name for some reason wasn't familiar with me. He's got a beard, a white beard. What's his name? And you said
Tom
you were
Campbell.
watching him all the time. Tom Campbell. Yeah, that's the one. And I'm sure I saw him a few years ago on this video about the Global Consciousness Project.
Right, yeah.
You heard about that, where they're measuring the Earth's magnetic field and finding it correlates with big global events, whether it be 9/11 or the millennium or the tsunami. And there are all these massive fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field when these big events happen. And it just kind of, yeah, it shows that human events, so the tsunami, you could say that's an Earth event, you might get a shift in the magnetic field, but human events, and where great amounts of human consciousness are focused on one thing at the same time, or there's a great height of emotion, whether it be positive or negative, seems to be reflected in the Earth's magnetic field, which I just found fascinating. And then when I saw that man's face, I thought, that's where I know him from that video about the Global Consciousness Project years and years ago. And the things you've been saying have been leading me to think about the people that you mentioned to me. You know, you talked about love as a healing, it's healing power, not just for your psyche and in the work you do, but the physical healing as well. And that made me think of Bruce Lipton. You mentioned to me that you were interested in him, and how when you are feeling love, your physical body becomes healthy. It's almost impossible to carry illness when you're in that state of love. So are you on board with the thinking of these people? What's your take on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are, again, it's a sign of the times that we're in, that these ex-scientists, you know, I think Tom Campbell was linked to NASA, Bruce Lipton was, you know, in that scientific field, that these people are stepping out and going, hang on a minute, we can't keep going with those ideas. This is what's going on. And like, oh my God, we're freaking powerful, man. You know, really, look what we can do to the Earth's resonance just by these feelings, just this love energy, and look what we can create with it. And I heard this really interesting idea that when the time arrives, when we have our powers back in alignment, you know, we'll be able to clean the seas, no problem, with our own hands, just by rearranging the molecules, and, you know, and the cars on the road, we can reconstruct the molecules around that and remove the tarmac and bring the grass back up, you know, with our own powers. Like, we're going to, we've got the powers to do that. And this is the path I feel that we're on. We're remembering this stuff. And I think Bruce Lipton and Tom Campbell and Greg Bearden, I think he's called.
I just wrote down his name here because everything you've been talking about has made me think of things. And you were talking about, I can't remember what, there was something in what you just said that made me think, Greg Braden. I'm writing that down.
No, these people are really, they're kind of like helping us to have faith in it. These are scientists saying this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, they're doing amazing stuff. It's brilliant. I love the way Tom Campbell just explains things. He's great. Really great.
And you've described this power within us and the changes that you feel we'll be able to make, you know, very soon. How soon? Do you think this will come in our lifetime? Are we looking at our children, their grandchildren? How soon do you think this can happen? How fast?
I don't know. Let's call it in, Alan.
Yeah. So it's as fast as we make it.
I really don't know. I don't know whether, I don't know. I don't know how the concept of time even fits in with this. I think we're on a very powerful timeline at the moment, and something big's going on. What exactly that's going to be, it feels like this shift from this fear state into a love state. And it's exciting. I think the more we can kind of hold that frequency and not buy into the bullshit that, I mean, I was just listening to the radio this morning, just listening to this tit for tat stuff with Russia and how it's like escalating. And it's like, wow, this is
laughable.
It's predictable. It's this kind of this algorithm that keeps running, you know, and as we start to connect, oh yeah, look, there's somebody's dropped, you know, whatever's going on politically. So as long as we don't actually start buying into that stuff and just stay in our hearts and keep the love going, it's up to us what happens, not them. We've got to remember that, you know. And I think
how many of us?
How many of us?
Are there now in the world? Is it 7.5 billion?
7.5 billion people, yeah. So there must be something pretty big going on, because there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of, you know, souls have incarnated to witness. And you know, you hear that a lot, that this is like the biggest party on earth at the moment, you know. If we can tune into the party feel of it, this is really, really exciting. Never before have we, perhaps, I don't know. So in answer to your question, Alan, I really don't know. I hope it's, you know, soon. But I suppose on an individual level, it happens for us as it happens for us as well.
Yeah.
You know, when you want it to.
Happens as we want it to, and as we make it happen, and also as we need it, because we'll, like you were mentioning before with the triggers, we get the lessons that we need. So it will happen. The things that will happen will be the things we need.
Absolutely, because it's all conspiring for you, all conspiring for your healing, all of the time. We've kind of forgotten that as well, because we're in this victim role, these victim modes that, oh, it's not fair, and knowing my luck, and this stuff keeps happening to me, and like we're missing the point of why these things happen to us, you know, and even just shifting that and getting the real reason for bad things, especially bad things that happen to us. It's really, really important. It's just one of the steps in it.
Wow. I'm looking forward to witnessing this. I'm hoping for another good 60 years. I just saw something on the news feed before. The world's oldest man is 112 officially. He's just received a certificate from the Guinness Book of Records. Wow. So I think, another good 60 years. So who knows what we might see. And the previous oldest man died in 2013, was born in 1897. And it just made me think what the world was like when he was young, and what the world was like when he died. And it made me think how much change we can witness within a lifetime. You know, he was born before the first Wright brothers flight, and he's died in 2013. So the amount of change that we could still witness is probably beyond our imagination.
It is beyond our imagination. Yeah, I really feel that. Yeah, I mean, we could say the same about our lifetimes. You know, even just doing this on a laptop and seeing your face and this technology is like, this would have just completely blown my mind as a kid. You know, and here we just take it for granted now. We grumble because the connection's not good enough.
Yeah, that is true. I was complaining before, and you had to move rooms. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And we take it so for granted. Yeah, because it moves so fast and we get so used to it so easily. And that just shows how adaptable we are, that we can adapt so much that we can complain about a slightly dodgy signal and a slightly weak broadband strength. And yet, if this was just a few years ago, we'd have been absolutely marveling at this technology, and we've just become so used to it. So we can get so used to the change. It happens so fast and we're so adaptable.
Yeah, we are.
And in terms of creating change, that's something you're trying to do this weekend, isn't it?
Yes, this weekend I'm co-hosting a introduction to IFS workshop at Yoga Central, which is at Victoria Warehouse in Trafford. And it's a full day, so people get the opportunity to get to know the model, absorb some of the principles of that. We share a video of Dick Schwartz in action. and seeing the master is great. He's a really great guy as well, by the way. He's lovely. And people get an opportunity to get into little practice pairs as well and experience IFS for themselves. And it will be a lovely day. A really sort of heartfelt day. I'm co-hosting this with Olivia Lester, who's from IFS UK. And there are a couple of spaces left. So if anybody's interested, they could get in touch.
Okay, and where should they go to find out more and to actually book a space?
Yes, so if they go to internalfamilysystems.training.co.uk and look at I think the heading is training and workshops, and click on that link there on their website. Or if you get in touch with me on my email, which is Charmain, CHARMAIN, at psychologycentral, all one word, .co.uk. And
okay, can I just stop you there? That did break up as you were saying it.
okay.
I'm going to ask you after this is done, if you
Yeah.
can leave me all the contact details, your own and the event, and I'll put it in the show description, and anywhere this gets posted, I'll make sure that all those details are there, because that did break up just
Okay, thank you, Alan.
So we'll make sure that everybody who wants to be there can be there, and anyone who wants to find out more can find out more, and anyone who wants to be in touch with you can find you. So where are you based? Where do you work from?
I'm in a clinic in Manchester called City Therapy, and it's in the Northern Quarter. I'm here most days. So I also do Skype sessions as well. IFS works incredibly well over Skype. And as I mentioned before, I run the IFS group from here as well. It's on the first Monday of every month, and it's just £5, and people can come and find out more about IFS that way as well. Yeah.
Okay. And you also mentioned earlier some self-help resources. So if someone can't make it to the group or wants to explore it on their own, can't make it to the workshop, can't come and see you, doesn't have Skype, if anyone doesn't have Skype these days, what else can they do? What other resources are available? Where can they find them?
So the main website, which is based over in America, is called selfleadership.org. And there's lots of resources on there, actually. There's video clips of Dick speaking. All the books are listed on their listings there. If you also go on YouTube and Google Dick Schwartz or Richard Schwartz or IFS, there are lots of people sort of posting interesting things on there now about IFS as well. Dick's done some incredibly good radio interviews, I think. So if you Google Dick Schwartz and radio, there's some really good articles there. Yeah, well, get in touch. There's also IFS Facebook pages. So there's the Manchester IFS group Facebook page.
That's yours, isn't it?
That's the IFS group page. There's other ones as well. There's sort of IFS community. If you just start, searching for IFS on there, you'll find pages and groups.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, sorry. Can I just mention the training as well?
Yeah, please do. Don't let me stop you.
The beautiful thing about IFS is because it is so solid as a model, people can train in this who don't have any prior qualifications around psychotherapies or psychology. And so the training is run at least twice a year over here in the UK and the rest of Europe. So the next one starts in November in Sheffield, and that's the level 1 training. So there's 3 different levels to the training. So if anybody's interested in that, that's also on the Internal Family Systems training website. The details of that are on there. Highly recommend it. It's beautiful. I've made some amazing friends that I will keep for life through that process. And it's been beautiful witnessing how we're all involved as we develop as IFS therapists. I would highly recommend.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up? Because I'm really grateful that you've given us a whole hour here at very, very short notice, and you've really explained the methodologies and explained a lot about your views of the world, and shared very openly. I really enjoyed that. I would love to do it again if you want to come back and talk more about different experiences, because you touched on so many different things that it was too much to cover in an hour. So if you ever want to come back, you're more than welcome. I'm going to put all the links that you've given me, I'm going to put them all in the show description. And if there's anything else you'd like to share with the audience before you finish, then please go ahead. Please do.
I just really want to say that it's been a real honor to do this, Alan, and I've really enjoyed it. And this is my passion, and I just want to really urge people to look into this in whatever way, and just to see how it resonates with them, because it has been a really life-changing experience. So, and I would love to come back and talk more. You're a very, very skilled interviewer. So thank you. It's been, you've made it very easy and lovely. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you very soon.
And
enjoy the week. Enjoy the workshop at the weekend.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.